Hello students. So today's concept is menstrual cycle. So far we have deal with spermatogenesis and oogenesis. So I have not told you about the oogenesis regulation because oogenesis and the puberty, that is menstrual cycle, the regulation is a bit of a similar. When I'm going to explain you the menstrual cycle, you're coming to know how the regulation of oogenesis also takes place. Okay. So menstrual cycle. So what is menstrual cycle? So menstrual cycle, so it is the reproductive cycle in female primates. Okay, so it is a kind of a reproductive cycle which can be seen in the female primates. What are female primates? Female primates are, some examples are monkeys, apes, and even us, human beings. Okay, so hence, so what happens, there is some reproductive cycle or the reproductive changes taking place within the ovary as well as the uterus. Okay, this is cyclic changes which is taking place in the uterus as well as, or with regarding to the ovary, we call it as menstrual cycle. So what are the characteristics of this menstrual cycle? Okay, it is of average interval of 28 days a cycle. Okay, whereas the first menstruation, that is during when puberty, we call it as menarche. Okay, so the first menstruation during puberty, we call it as menarche. Okay, that is about 12 to 14, sometimes it varies 16 years also. Nowadays, because of the eating habits and our day-to-day daily activities, based on the daily activities and eating habits, we may get the puberty before 12 also sometimes, or after 16 also. Okay, it depends on how we are maintaining our physiology, okay, our body function. So in on average, the menstrual cycle, the first menstruation at the time of puberty happens at the age of 12 to 14 years or 16 years. That first menstruation, we call it as menarche, and this menstrual cycle is of 28 days cycle. It is a reproductive cycle taking place in female primates. Okay, in non-primates, what is the name of the reproductive cycle? Yes, you are correct. Oestrus cycles will be in the female non-primates, whereas in female primates, that is menstrual cycle. Based on that changes, this menstrual cycle is classified into 4 different phases. So first phase is menstrual phase. Second phase is follicular, or it is also called as proliferative phase. Okay. Third phase is, we call it as ovulation or ovulatory phase. Okay, and the last phase is luteal or secretory phase. So these are the 4 different phases happening in the reproductive cycle of female primates. We'll write how many days it will take place, like the period or time period of these different phases. So menstrual cycle is about 0 to 5 days. Like day 1 to 5 days, that is menstrual phase, or it is also called as bleeding stage, where there will be shedding of endometrium wall and we bleed. Okay, and next is a follicular or proliferatory phase from the 6th day sometimes till 13 days. Means on average 10 to 12 days there will be second phase. Third phase, the ovulation is exactly at the 4th day. There is no changes. Ovulation is exactly at the 14th day. Okay, not 4th, 14th day of 28 days cycle. And the last phase is from the 15th day to 28th day. So these are the on an average time or days between the interval of 28 days. So first 5 days there will be bleeding stage, there will be shedding. So the next days, 10 to 12 days, that is from the 6th day or whenever there is end of menstrual or bleeding stage, soon after the second stage will start. After the second stage or phase, exactly at the 14th day there will be ovulation, or it is also called as ovulatory phase. And after ovulation till the 28 days there will be luteal or secretory phase. And one more thing I need to tell you regarding menstrual cycle. At 28 days cycle, okay, only one egg or ovum is released. ಓಕೆ, ಈ 78 ದಿನದ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಲ್ ಸೈಕಲ್ ಏನು ಪೀರಿಯಡ್ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಆ 28 ಡೇಸ್ ಒಳಗಡೆ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಒನ್ ಎಗ್ ಅಥವಾ ಓವಮ್ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅದು ಓವರಿಯಿಂದ ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಹೌದು, ಎಸ್, ಯು ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಆಸ್ಕ್, ದೇರ್ ಆರ್ ಮೆನಿ ಲೈಕ್ ಮಲ್ಟಿಪಲ್, sometimes it will happen like multiple embryos will be formed, but regularly or normally what happens, a human ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಆ ಒಂದು ಕೆಪಾಸಿಟಿ ಏನಿದೆ to withstand a proper single embryo. Okay, on average I am telling. So only one egg or ovum is released in each menstrual cycle or in each menstrual period, remember. So these are the different phases and this is the basic of menstrual cycle. Now we are going to deal with separately the menstrual phase, all those 4 phases, and in the same way the changes both in the uterus and ovary during these phases, and also the hormonal regulation of it. Okay, yes, you take down this. So carefully take down the next thing what I'm going. With the diagram I'm explaining you the menstrual cycle. Okay, so for that in the beginning we are going to divide. Okay, we are going to divide because we are going to see the changes both in ovary as well as uterus in the same time. So what happens? Okay, yes, this only I'll write. This is changes in uterus. This is to know about hormones, ovarian hormones, how they change, okay, increase or decrease. So this layer changes in ovary. Okay, this is about hormones and this is changes in uterus. Here we can write the master or the main gland, not master, because master gland is now hypothalamus, right? So pituitary gland, because we know from where the gonadotropins are releasing. We know obviously it is because of the influence of gonadotropic hormones, gonadotropin releasing hormones, but no need to mention that we know from hypothalamus GnRH is released, which in turn stimulates the gonadotropins which is produced from pituitary gland. Okay, so we'll start now. We'll start the first cycle, that is menstrual cycle. As we know the menstrual cycle, in menstrual cycle the first phase, that is menstrual phase, or it is also called as menstruation. So what happens during the menstruation? What we have observed, we know in the uterus is internally lined by one layer, we call it as endometrium, and we know during the menstruation or the bleeding phase this endometrium is released or shed off. Okay, so ಏನು ಓದಿದೀವಿ ನಾವು menstrual cycle ಅಲ್ಲಿ first phase ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, menstruation phase ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ, or it is also called as menstruation. Why? Because of during that stage there will be bleeding ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. bleeding ಹೇಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ? Because of the shedding. ಈ endometrium layer ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ, it will be shed off from the uterus. Okay, this shedding indicates bleeding or release of those endometrium layer from the uterus. Okay, we can mention like this. So this is menstruation. I'll write endometrium shedding. Okay, releasing, ಈ ತರ ಶೆಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೇಜಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ? Yes, this stage we call it as menstrual phase, which is of 0 to 5 days. Okay, idayitu. I am going to draw the line here. This indicates the first phase. Why there is a shedding? ಇಲ್ಲಿ shedding ಯಾಕೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು? endometrium wall ಯಾಕೆ shedding ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, so we know a hormone, that is, this indicates, I'll give the different colors for different hormones. This is our progesterone hormone. During the first days of cycle, the progesterone hormone will be reduced. Because of the reduction, because low level of the production of progesterone makes endometrium to shed. Means what happens? Progesterone decreases. Okay, this what happens? This progesterone decrease ಆದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ, this will lead or this will stimulate the pituitary to produce a hormone called FSH. Okay, one more time we'll revise. So menstrual phase ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, the endometrium wall ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ uterus ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಯಾಕೆ ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು? ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ ಪ್ರಮಾಣ ಏನಿರುತ್ತೆ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಇದ್ದಾಗ, ಇಫ್ there is a decrease in the level of progesterone hormone which leads to the shedding of endometrium wall, this we call it as menstruation or bleeding. Okay, once there is low level of progesterone, ಇದೇನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, pituitary hormone ಅನ್ನ stimulate ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. Why they stimulate? To release follicle stimulating hormone. Soon they release a follicle stimulating hormone. Then what it does? Okay, this follicle stimulating hormone helps, we know, FSH help the follicles to get developed. And this is our primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, and this is our mature Graafian follicle. Once ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ FSH release ಆದಾಗ they go and work on the follicle development, and this changes is happening in the ovary. ಇದು ಓವರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, soon after FSH release ಆದಾಗ primary follicles ಇಂದ Graafian follicle development ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. Means there is a follicle development in the ovary. In the same way, we should look after the uterus also. What is happening? Once they shed off, it will continue to the follicular phase. ಓವರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಫಾಲಿಕಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗ್ತದೆ, ಹಾಗೆ ಯೂಟ್ರಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಏನು ಎಲ್ಲ ಶೆಡ್ ಆಗೋಗಿತ್ತು ಎಂಡೋಮೆಟ್ರಿಯಂ ವಾಲ್, ವಿಚ್ ಈಸ್ completely cleaned in the uterus, that is endometrium wall, it start repairing, it start rebuilding. Okay, means what happens, they rebuild like this endometrium, 2 to 3 mm thickness they form, and they become glandular. What? Endometrium become glandular. Okay, ಈ ಒಂದು ಡೆವಲಪ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹೇಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ? See, we know still the progesterone level is low here because there is no progesterone thing, still it is low. Okay, yes. What happens actually when there is FSH release? We know follicles are developed, and what follicles releases? Follicles releases, or they start producing estrogen. Means the estrogen level increases like this. This is our estrogen hormone. This is progesterone. Okay, and endometrium wall ಮತ್ತೆ ಪುನಃ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. and now this phase, ಈ ಫೇಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಏನಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ನಾವು? here follicular phase, that is 6 to 13 days. Okay, follicular phase or proliferatory phase. Here one more time I'll draw the line because it indicates the end of the second phase. Okay, now one more thing is that soon after increase in the number of estrogen, the estrogen amount increases here. This increase, here we can write estrogen will increases, right? This in turn stimulates the pituitary gland. Again, what it does? Stimulates the pituitary gland to decrease FSH and to increase the production of LH. Okay, one more time. Okay, one more time. Don't get confused. Okay, so once ಏನಾಗುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಈ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು ನಿಮಗೆ. Yes, soon after progesterone level become decrease, it will stimulate pituitary gland to produce FSH. Once FSH produce, they help in the development of follicles. Okay, there will be follicle development. Follicle development ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದ ಹಾಗೆ follicle starts producing the female sex hormone, that is estrogen. Okay, estrogen level becomes high. In the same way, in uterus what is happening? There will be shedding. In the previous phase, all the endometrium will be slugged off. ಎಲ್ಲ ಎಂಡೋಮೆಟ್ರಿಯಂ ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಏನಾಗಿತ್ತು, ಶೆಡ್ ಆಗಿ ರಿಮೂವ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು ಯೂಟ್ರಸ್ ಇಂದ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅಗೇನ್ ಇಟ್ ವಿಲ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ಸ್ ರೀಗ್ರೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಡ್ಯೂರಿಂಗ್ ದ ಫಾಲಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಫೇಸ್. Okay, not that much thickness, only 2 to 3 mm thickness, and they become glandular. Okay, means they start secreting. It may be blood, it may be nutrients, everything, they become glandular. At the end of follicular phase, because of the increase in the level of estrogen, this increased level of estrogen again stimulates pituitary gland to stop the production of FSH. not to stop, ಏನ್ ಮಾಡತ್ತೆ, ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್, ಈಸ್ಟ್ರೋಜನ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಆಗಿರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಅದೊಂದು ಸ್ಟಿಮ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಕಳಿಸುತ್ತೆ ಪಿಟ್ಯೂಟರಿ ಗ್ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ಗೆ. ಏನಂತ ಸ್ಟಿಮ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕಳಿಸುತ್ತೆ, FSH ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ, LH ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ. ನಾವು ದ ಟೈಮ್ ಈಸ್ ಟು ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸ್ ದ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಆಫ್ FSH and to increase the production of LH. Okay, so soon after there will be changes. This Graafian follicle starts rupturing, okay, and the oocyte will be released. Okay, and this we call it as ovulation. Understood? Soon after ಈ changes ಆಗುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಆವಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುವಂತದ್ದು ಹೇಳಿ? Yes, here what happens? There will be increase in LH. This is LH increase, and this peak of LH we call it as LH surge. ಏನು ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಇರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ LH, ಆ ಒಂದು ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ LH ಗೆ ನಾವು LH surge ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. Hence during this time there will be ovulation, release of egg. Not actually egg, what we have studied in oogenesis. There will be release of what? Secondary oocyte. ಹೌದಾ? ನಾಟ್ ಎಗ್. ಎಗ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ? ಎಗ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗೋದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೆಕೆಂಡರಿ oocyte ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ವೆನ್ ದರ್ ಈಸ್ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ will go and contact with the secondary oocyte, then only they pause ಆಗಿರುವಂತ ಮಿಯೋಟಿಕ್ ಅರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಹಿಯರ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ರಿಲೀಸಿಂಗ್ ದ ಸೆಕೆಂಡರಿ oocyte. Okay, and this Graafian follicle now get converted into what? One more structure. This we call it as corpus luteum. Okay, soon after release of ovulation, what happens? There will be, yes, conversion of the ruptured Graafian follicle into corpus luteum. And we know this corpus luteum, what happens? In turn they secrete the hormone progesterone, right? They secrete the hormone progesterone. Okay, so ಇಲ್ಲಿ ತನಕ ಏನು ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಇತ್ತು ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್, when after the ovulation, I'll write here, soon after the ovulation, yes, the progesterone hormone will increases, the level of progesterone hormone increases. Okay, and this leads to the next phase. This phase we can write as ovulatory phase, that is exactly at the 14th day. Okay, same thing here also. Okay, when there is a release of progesterone, yes, again there will be much more foldings of endometrium wall. Okay, so thickness increase ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಎಂಡೋಮೆಟ್ರಿಯಂ ವಾಲ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. Now it will be 5 mm thickness. Okay, now the question is, see, if okay ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಮ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಆಯಿತು, ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ ಸೀಕ್ರೆಟ್ ಆಯಿತು. ನಾವು ಏನು ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ ಪ್ರೆಗ್ನೆನ್ಸಿನ ಮೇಂಟೈನನ್ನು ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು ಯಾವಾಗ, ವೆನ್ ದಿಸ್ ರಿಲೀಸ್ಡ್ ಎಗ್ ಈಸ್ ಫ್ಯೂಸ್ಡ್ ವಿತ್ sperm. When it fertilized with sperm, then there will be formation of zygote. Okay, and progesterone maintain the pregnancy. If not, agillapa, okay, there is no sperm itself in the female body, there is no fertilization, then what happens, this egg which is released during ovulation, they remain for few days, like 2 days or 3 days. Okay, iddu destroy agutte. Then what happens, this corpus luteum get converts into corpus albicans. Yavaga condition eno, if no fertilization, if there is no fertilization, corpus luteum gets converted into corpus albicans. Okay, we'll see the changes in the progesterone. If there is fertilization, there will be same amount of progesterone hormone will be in the peak level. Okay, if fertilization iddaga, okay, it will be high what progesterone. If there is no fertilization, ಈ ಒಂದು ಎಗ್ ಜೊತೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಆದರೆ again they come down, the progesterone hormone level will be decreased like this. So this is if there is no fertilization. If there is no fertilization, again this phase, which phase, this is luteal phase. Okay, that is of 15 to 28 days. This luteal phase will continue with the menstrual phase. ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಲೋ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಎಂಡೋಮೆಟ್ರಿಯಂ ವಾಲ್ ಏನು ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿದೆ, they will shed and they continue with the menstruation, that is bleeding phase. This is what happens in the menstrual cycle. Okay, so you can take it down, just to see around. I'll explain you one more time, just see around. Okay, this is during LH, this one. Okay, yes, I'll explain you one more time. Correct agi kelri. We have 4 different phases. We know how many days they are going to perform, like within the 28 days interval of time. So first nodri, ಇದನ್ನ ಈಸಿಲಿ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಕೆ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಲ್ ಸೈಕಲ್ ನಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಟು ಯೂಟ್ರಸ್ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ರಿಲೇಟೆಡ್ ಟು ovary. Here there is both the changes taking place in ovary as well as uterus, and in the same way hormonal changes. So this diagrams helps us to understand all 3 togetherly. Okay, see, first changes ನಾವು ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುವ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಲ್ ಫೇಸ್ ಇಂದ, ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬ್ಲೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಫೇಸ್ ಇಂದ. ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಬ್ಲೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಯಾಕೆ ಬ್ಲೀಡಿಂಗ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಏನು ಎಂಡೋಮೆಟ್ರಿಯಂ ವಾಲ್ವ್ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, ದೇ ವಿಲ್ ಶೆಡ್ ಆಫ್. Okay, why they shed off, what is the reason? Because of the low level of progesterone hormone ಕಡಿಮೆ ಇದ್ದಾಗ ಏನಾಗುವಂಥದ್ದು, yes, endometrium wall shedding ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. This indicates menstrual phase. So what happens when there is a low level of progesterone? They gives a signal to the pituitary gland. What to do? to produce FSH hormone. Once the FSH hormone is produced, this FSH hormones helps in the development of follicles within the ovary. ಓವರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಸೂನ್ ಆಫ್ಟರ್ FSH ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆದಾಗ ಫಾಲಿಕಲ್ ಡೆವಲಪ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ವಿ ನೋ oocytes are formed in the follicles. oogenesis ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ in the follicles of ovary, that is primary, secondary, tertiary and Graafian follicles. Once follicles are started to develop, what they produce estrogen hormone. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಏನಾಯ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲಿ, as it is progesterone hormone level ಕಡಿಮೆನೇ ಇದೆ. In the same way, because of the follicle development, increase in the level of estrogen. At the same time, what is happening? Shed ಆಗಿರುವಂತ endometrium wall, again it will regrow. Okay, becomes a glandular. Totally this phase we call it as follicular phase or proliferatory phase. Once there is increase in the number of estrogen, the level of estrogen, what it gives, again it will give signals to the pituitary gland to reduce the secretion of FSH and increase the secretion of LH hormone. Increase the secretion of LH. Once there is increase in the secretion of LH, our Graafian follicle ruptures and it release egg, okay, or secondary oocyte. This we call it as ovulation. And the ruptured Graafian follicle get converted into corpus luteum, which in turn produces progesterone hormone. So LH surge means increase in the level of LH. It only affects the ovulation, that we call it as ovulatory effect. That is only one day, 14th day, only one day it will happen. LH increases, egg is released. Okay, next, once they converted into corpus luteum, this ovulatory phase now continued with the luteal phase. luteal phase ಗೆ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ. luteal phase ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಂ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಶನ್ ಆಯ್ತು. ಲೂಟಿಯಲ್ ಫೇಸ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಹೆಸರು ಬಂತು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ, ಈ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಂ ಇಂದ. ಅಂಡ್ ವಿ ನೋ ಈ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಂ ಯಾವ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಹಾರ್ಮೋನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಓಕೆ ಓಕೆ ಎಸ್ಯೂಮ್ ನಾವು ಎರಡು ಅಸಂಪ್ಷನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋ, ಒಂದು ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು, ಒಂದು ಆಗದೇ ಇರುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಇಮ್ಯಾಜಿನ್ ಇಫ್ ದರ್ ಇಸ್ ಅ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂದಾಗ ಈ ನಮ್ಮ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಂ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ, ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಸತತವಾಗಿ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಅಂಡ್ ದೇ ಮೇಂಟೈನ್ ದ ಪ್ರೆಗ್ನೆನ್ಸಿ ಅಂಡ್ ದೇರ್ ವಿಲ್ ಬಿ ಸೇಮ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ರೊಜೆಸ್ಟಿರಾನ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್, ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ಡ್ ಅಮೌಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಲೆವೆಲ್. ಇಫ್ ದರ್ ಇಸ್ ನೋ ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಪ್ಪ, ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ಓವ್ಯುಲೇಷನ್ ಆಗಿ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಮು ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ಬಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಎಗ್ ಜೊತೆ ಸ್ಪರ್ಮ್ ಫ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಫರ್ಟಿಲೈಸೇಷನ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದಾಗ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಲೂಟಿಯಂ ಗೆಟ್ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇಂಟು ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಆಲ್ಬಿಕನ್ಸ್. ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಆಲ್ಬಿಕನ್ಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಆದಾಗ ಕಾರ್ಪಸ್ ಆಲ್ಬಿಕನ್ಸ್ can't produce progesterone. Hence what happens, decrease in the level of progesterone, decline in the level of progesterone, which in turn ends this luteal phase. ಇದರಿಂದ ಈ luteal phase ಎಂಡ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ಮತ್ತೆ 28 days ಆಗಿರೋ ಸೈಕಲ್ ನಂತರ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಲ್ ಸೈಕಲ್ ಅಥವಾ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ನ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಸೇಮ್ ಈ ಒಂದು ಸ್ಟೆಪ್, ಆಫ್ಟರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ ವಿಲ್ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂ. ಸೈಕ್ಲಿಕಲಿ ಏನಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಚೇಂಜಸ್ ಆಗುವಂಥದ್ದು. ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ದ ಮೆನ್ಸ್ಟ್ರಲ್ ಸೈಕಲ್, that is reproductive cycle, changes taking place in uterus, hormonal changes in the ovary with related to the pituitary gland secretion regulation. Now comes to the oogenesis regulation. ಏನಂತ ಓದಿದ್ವಿ, FSH ರಿಲೀಸ್ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂದಾಗ one gonadotropin ನೋಡ್ರಿ, follicle development, nothing but oogenesis, which in turn produces estrogen. Another hand, LH, a gonadotropin, what it does, they helps in ovulation. In the same way, it helps corpus luteum to produce progesterone. These two are the regulation of oogenesis. These two you can add for the regulation of oogenesis. And rest of all, everything is in menstrual cycle. I hope you understood this. Okay, thank you.